guys, this is Colin from Blackjack Apprenticeship, and I am joined with Andy Uyal, former card counter, current casino manager, and the author of Blackjack Insiders. This is his second time on the podcast. Andy, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Colin. It's good to be back with you. How are you?
Good, good. People really enjoyed your podcast last time, and I was just telling you before we started, I went down some deep rabbit trails of research for this. But starting off, how are you doing with all this coronavirus stuff?
It's been interesting. I'm almost 40 days removed from being in a casino, and it feels good, to tell you the truth. I hate to see the world in peril, but it's given me some time to kind of focus on some personal things, and it's pretty eerie in Las Vegas, though. Nobody working and nobody being in casinos, and basically our whole state economy being on hold, right?
Yeah, man. I've been trying to read, it seems like it's changing every day in the news about Las Vegas specifically, and then there was some fun viral interview with the mayor of Las Vegas. I don't know if you caught any of that.
You say? Yeah, I caught that. I preferred not to be in a control group,
Yeah,
but
seriously.
the mayor's gonna say what she's gonna say.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we could go down a deep, conversation about that. But I was going to ask, being home, more, have you been writing much?
Yeah, quite a bit actually. I turned in a manuscript to our editor. Colin and I have the same editor, and received some notes back on it. Started a new project too. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of writing actually.
Is it the fiction you were working on before?
Yes. And the next one is fiction too, but I've done some other stuff too. I've done some writing for my website and some stuff for our podcast for the Dropbox with Uyal, and I've been doing some stuff for that too. So it's been good to kind of be able to focus on some other things.
So I've been listening to some of those. You've been enjoying doing the Dropbox with Willie?
It's been great. Yeah, Willie's been awesome. He's been a good friend. He's been a good partner. The episodes have been really fun to do with him. It's just a great guy to talk to, and it's awesome to be doing that with him.
That's cool. I saw your most recent one was about coronavirus, and I've read your blog post about cleanliness, or rather the lack of cleanliness in casinos. Can you give our listeners maybe like the Cliffs Notes version of what you guys discussed?
Yeah, we sort of just talked about how, in general, casinos have always been unclean and unsanitary, just by the nature of being so close to everybody and all touching the same surfaces, and with the chips and the cash and the tables and everything else that everybody's touching all day long. So the situation that we're in is kind of forced us to maybe re-examine some of these things, and that's what Willie and I do in the podcast is present. We go over some ideas that have already been presented, and we present some ideas of our own about how to lessen germ exposure and lessen just these problems.
Yeah, what do you think that's gonna look like? Is it gonna be employees wearing masks and gloves, players wearing masks?
I think at first there's going to be masks required. It's hard for me to project, but I think that's the way that it should be. It's looking like that's what's going to happen. Of course, if it doesn't happen, then I look like an idiot. But it seems like the way to go, really. And I don't know how long that lasts. But yeah, I definitely think we should see some big changes at the beginning, and then probably not so much after a little while.
Is that going to be, you think, players wearing masks too?
Like I said, it's hard to project, but I think that's what should happen, especially if somebody's going to be in a casino, a patron, where they're going to be within that 6 foot range of employees, then they should be wearing masks. And due to the nature of table games, that's everybody, right? That's every customer.
Yeah.
So if people are going to be playing table games, they should have to wear masks.
And do you think that's going to result in more ID checks of players?
More what? I'm sorry.
Checking a player's ID. I'm thinking about, if I'm a card counter and I go sit down at a table and I'm wearing a mask, and then I'm betting any significant amount of money, are casinos going to use that as an opportunity to say, well, we need to see your ID more often than is currently the case?
I I don't think so. As far as like advantage play identification, it's more about the play than the face anyway.
Okay.
More about watching what's going on the table. I talked about that with Willie. I think we even talked about it on a podcast that like he's not really looking at people's faces.
Mm-hmm.
And the more recognizable players should still be able to be recognized, even if their mouth and nose is covered.
Mm-hmm. Personally, how are you feeling about going back to work with this virus still active?
Well, it doesn't appear to be something I'm going to have to worry about for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I've been pretty happy with the way overall with the way the governor's handled it. So I think by the time we are able to go back to work, it's going to be done the right way. I'm pretty confident that that's going to be the case. That being said, we'll have to wait and see, when it happens.
Yeah. What's the latest, word on the street of when casinos are hoping to reopen?
Oh, any word on the street is just pulled from what somebody thinks or projects anyway. So there's been nothing from anybody that matters about official dates or projected dates or even target dates.
I mean, I this again, the information's changing daily, but if it could be a year and a half before there's a vaccine, I mean, casinos aren't going to wait that long.
No, of course not. I think the general consensus is sometime June, early June, maybe even late May. But as I said, there's been no official word on that. Sisolak our governor was just on the news last night saying it's not today and it's not tomorrow. They always try to get a date out of them, but there's just no way to say for sure.
Yeah. Anything they say now we're gonna have drastically different data and circumstances in a month, or even in 2 weeks than now. So I just thought I'd ask what the word is there in Ground Zero in Vegas.
Yeah, they tried that. They tried that saying that we're going to close for 2 weeks, we're going to close for a month. They tried that initially, and it just didn't work. So I think now we're all just kind of playing it by ear.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on. I just listened this morning to your Dropbox podcast episode on card counting. And Willie said that AP, that kind of the word on the street for him was that APs had moved on to other pastures or even kind of thumbed their noses up at card counters, but it's back. Card counting is back. And I think that probably was the case, 10 years ago. I always just stayed strong. Like, card counting was good to me. So kept doing it and had no problem training people to do it and just been quietly doing our thing. But you stated that card counters are in a better position now than in a long time. Can you kind of break down why you think that is?
Well, a lot of it doesn't even have to do with the counters themselves. It has to do with the casinos being unprepared for them. I talk a lot about the growing availability of training and of places to play for counters. And while all that is growing, the training on the casino side is shrinking. It's getting more dated.
So the training on the casino side is getting worse?
Not getting worse, but it's the same training as it was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. There's not a lot of new information, and there's not a lot of people to administer that new information that can administer it accurately. So while everything is growing for the player, it's shrinking for the other side, and that results in what we talked about.
You also talked about that floor supervisors are responsible for more tables than they used to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I started watching Blackjack, I talk about it in the book a little bit, where I used to watch 4 tables. That was my section 4. And I think the big section was 6 back then. And now it's pretty common to see floor supervisors watching 8 tables.
Yeah. So that makes me think of waiting tables with my last real job. And I remember, when I started out as a waiter, I was responsible for like 3 tables because you don't have to be that good to like take care of 3 tables. And then when you get better, you get 4 table sections or 6, or if you want to make the good money and you're really good, you got 8 tables. But there's just no way to like keep up on 8 people or 8 tables worth of people at your restaurant or whatever. I can't imagine a floor supervisor doing all the tasks he's responsible for that many tables. So then it's more on surveillance, or
Well, it's definitely harder to do it accurately. There's what's being done is being done and just passing by. It's not. I mean, people are guessing all the time at where this money has gone and where that money has gone and who took this. So yeah, there's definitely no way to be accurate with 8 full tables of customers. Just to reinforce your point.
Do you think that floor supervisors are just backing off more non-winning players because they don't have the time to analyze the player, or no?
Usually floor supervisors aren't the ones to make the back off anyways, but I definitely think they're
okay.
I definitely think in general the casino spends more time than they should on non-winning players because they just don't have the correct resources to evaluate and to decide who to evaluate.
So do you think they're just calling up to surveillance more often and just wasting those resources that more than they used to?
I don't know about more than they used to because I've only been in the business for 10 years, but I know that they do it to an excessive degree. There's a lot of just simply winning players that are being evaluated for, to me, no good reason. I think I wrote a post about this.
Yes, I read it
recently and told a story about when I was playing green chips and there was a guy next to me playing black chips. I, of course, was counting and he was doing nothing other than just guessing and playing and winning. And the floor supervisor made a call upstairs where I could get over here and ask him for an evaluation on my table, which, of course, would make anybody nervous.
Yeah.
But I overheard that it was for the other player. It was for the guy that was winning. I was getting my butt kicked playing green chips, so he wasn't worried about me. He was worried about the guy that was winning, just guessing.
The WAG, the wild ass guesser.
Yeah, the WAG system. I'm a big fan of the WAG system. The wild ass guesser, exactly. So they evaluated this guy, and surveillance had to do their whole review on him, and I assume had to do their whole rundown and voice analysis and everything on a player that really had no reason to even do that.
That's funny. So at the end of the podcast about card counting, Willie says, maybe we could improve the training. And I was thinking like, hey, I'd be happy to offer training to surveillance personnel, but it's going to be on the WAG system. I'm not going to give a card counting training, but
they kind of need that, right? I mean, not just surveillance, but like in general, they kind of need to be able to recognize somebody that's not card counting.
Well, I'm gonna start WAG apprenticeship because that sounds fun. Well, okay, so answer this: if you were playing now as a card counter, how would this information, how things have shifted, how would that impact your approach?
I would stay longer and play harder, and I used to be a little worried about longevity.
Mm-hmm. Would you wait for a call to surveillance before sweating if you think, the average floor person doesn't have the training?
At least, at the very least. And even after that, I would probably still stay for a little while because they're going to, the evaluation process takes some time.
That's it. That's really interesting. So, okay. I want you to go down this rabbit trail with me. So bear with me. I think this is going to be worth it.
Okay.
Willie asks you, is card counting more of a threat than 20 years ago? And you said, yes, the training is better for players. The training is worse for casinos, and there are just more casinos, which you kind of summed up for us a few minutes ago. And I can imagine every casino operator, surveillance or casino manager listening to that and kind of panicking that card counters are this huge threat. But I kind of want to put this into perspective. So I looked up the total revenue of the gambling market in the United States over the last 15 years. I did a little research, and I'm happy to provide anyone that wants it, where I found all this information. But some quick math says that gaming, not just casinos, but gaming produces an average Vegas profit of $189 million a year.
Okay.
And by my math, card counters collectively cost, based on, you were saying maybe 300 to 400 card counters can make a living off of it. Not to mention all the wannabes that are losing money trying to count cards, which I know there are a lot of because I get their emails all the time. But collectively, I would think card counters cost casinos about 1,000th of a percentage of those gaming profits. So card counters are basically a rounding error to casinos' profit margins. Don't you think casinos could just make that up by dealing more rounds per hour with better deck penetration?
Yes. I've been an advocate for deeper deck penetration for years. That's a tough point to get across to people that are higher up, though.
So you wrote in a blog post about, the casino countermeasure of half shoeing a suspected card counter and how it costs money, which I totally agree with the premise, but why not take it further? Why not move the shuffle back to a deck? If every round or every, minute spent shuffling rather than dealing is costing money, why not advocate for deeper deck penetration, because you're going to make up for it so much more so by rounds per hours for the 99.99% of the gamblers that aren't a threat.
Sounds so simple, doesn't it? You're absolutely right.
Okay, so I'm pushing for a quarter deck cutoff. I remember speaking at the World Gaming Protection Conference a number of years back. Willie asked if I would speak, and I, during my talk, I kind of broke down how the church team, this team that I ran, this feared blackjack team that beat casinos for millions of dollars. When you actually break down the math, we cost each casino less than $1,000 a year, which is probably less than they're spending on coffee for their surveillance workers.
Yes.
And I did the math, and during the years the church team ran, for every dollar casinos made, which all this stuff is on the internet, how much casinos made, for every dollar casinos made, we cost casinos 3,000ths of a penny. So again, we're kind of this rounding error. But after I was done speaking, there was this line of surveillance operators wanting to ask me how they could better catch card counters.
It's a hot topic.
I guess it feels like the ultimate case of casinos being penny wise and pound foolish. I mean, of course I benefit, right? If card counters can count cards more, but and casinos can't let card counters just sit endlessly at every casino. But is there a way of helping casinos put the threat of card counters into perspective rather than, thinking that this is the biggest threat?
I hope so. I've been trying to do it for a long time. For years now, I've been trying to do that. So I'm just one man. There's only so much a guy can do. But you're exactly right. I mean, I talk about that all the time. How just the amount of resources and the amount of effort that goes into catching and detecting and preventing card counters is ludicrous. It just is.
That's interesting. I mean, I'd understand if card counters were the biggest threat to casinos. I'd understand, the panic and the extreme measures it seems like they take. But it feels a little silly when you kind of like break down the math of it. But I guess what are you gonna do? Okay,
exactly. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Maybe there's like 2 casino personnel listening to this that are going to say, maybe I shouldn't panic the next time I think someone's a card counter.
And if you want to panic, my message has been, if you want to panic, then acquire the adequate training to be able to panic sufficiently.
Yeah. So that brings me to kind of the next topic. Casinos are going to see advantage players as undesirables, however you want to take it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about backoffs. I thought it was interesting what you and Willie said about bringing security to backoffs. Is that something that you think can or will change over time as it becomes less of like the old school Vegas mentality? Or are some casinos going to try to throw their weight around to intimidate advantage players?
I think there's still a lot of that out there, way too much. And I still kind of just shake my head when I see a couple of security officers going with the pit boss over to make a back off. It's just like, why is this? it's going back to the resources thing. These security officers are supposed to be, they've got some important stuff they're supposed to be doing, and not providing muscle for the pit boss. It's asking somebody not to play anymore. And even when I've made back offs, I've been advised to take security along, and I just don't, for the most part. I don't want to waste anybody's time, and it's just not a necessary measure. But it is something. There's that old school us against them, and it's the card counters are the bad guys, and the vigilante security needs to be there, and it's just silly.
Well, I mean, I was thinking there's a cost of the security guard's time, but not to mention when one of these, untrained, maybe not like super bright security guards oversteps his bounds, and then there's a lawsuit, But
yeah, which a lot of us have had experiences or near experiences with.
Yep. Yep. So, okay, I want to not just look at the side of the casino, but you mentioned hostile players. Can you give any examples of kind of a hostile advantage player that got backed off?
I had one get a little uppity with me and kind of start yelling and stuff like that. And it happened to be one of those times that I didn't have security with me, but they came over pretty quick. And he wasn't violent or anything, but he was kind of screaming and made a scene. And I don't know if it was just to make a show, or if he was really that upset about it. Because you'd think, advantage players kind of know that it's coming sooner or later. And most of us, I say us, most of the advantage players don't want to make a scene. They don't want to be memorable.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've only had that one time, but usually when Willie and I talk about hostile players, we're talking about just the average guy that gets drunk and rowdy.
Well, okay. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I went on a long rant about how casinos should maybe, ease off of card counters, but I also want to say, how can we as advantage players, make these interactions go better for everybody? Any advice?
The same advice or the same method that I say in my book that you're supposed to take is just say okay and leave. Don't be memorable. Don't be confrontational. Don't be a smart ass. Give them no reason to get carried away. If there's no reason to get carried away, then they probably won't.
Do you think that? I mean, maybe Vegas isn't the same as the rest of the country, but I guess I'm just curious what the perception of advantage players is among casino staff from experientially. Are they known as assholes, or are they known as like nice people?
I would say they're seen as vigilantes. Like I like to use that word when I talk about advantage players. Like nobody wants to deal with them. Nobody. I still I cringe every time I hear it. I still hear the word cheater a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Not many things about them being nice guys.
Yeah, man, it's tough. It's tough because Willie, he didn't. I don't think he meant it, but he kept using the phrase, card counters and cheaters, and he wasn't lumping them together. He was saying, well, in surveillance, when we have to deal with card counters and cheaters, but as an AP, it's like, please, like, put a hard pause or something between those.
Or an or.
But it's a tough thing because yes, exactly, yes, or there you go. But it's a tough thing because I think we want to stand up for ourselves and say, hey, I didn't do anything wrong, but you're kind of further encouraging, that we're less desirable if we're confrontational. So, I think that's really brilliant advice to say, well, hey, you don't want to be memorable anyway. Tommy Highland talks about, like, one of the things to his benefit is he's got a not very memorable face. And so he's able to go back to casinos over and over. You add to that not being a memorable back off, and that seems really wise.
Yeah, that's what Tommy said all along, is to not be memorable. And when he gets backed off, he just says okay, and then he leaves. And then he goes back a month later and nobody remembers who he is.
Yeah, that's smart. So you mentioned that in your early days you thumbed through the cards when you suspected someone was counting cards, but there was a bluff. You didn't even really know. And in that case, as the story went, the player got up and left, and who knows why. But how often do you think this is the case? Do you think that this happens a lot, that players are leaving because like a pit boss or floor supervisor just starts thumbing through the cards to see how the person's going to respond?
Yeah, maybe not necessarily that tactic specifically, but I know I've left for reasons that I probably shouldn't have left for. And people have this. Players have this fear of the phone. God, anytime the phone rings, you gotta.
Mm-hmm.
It's 90%, 95% even likely that call's not about you. So I would say that players leave too often all the time.
That's good. Hey, you guys heard it from the source. You're leaving too often.
I've done it.
Any other things where you look back and you're like, oh, okay, that, I should have played through that?
Mainly just stuff with the phone and heat in general, especially when I was someplace where I knew I wasn't going to be back. Sometimes I would leave just to avoid a back off, when in truth, like, it didn't really matter if I got backed off. I was never going to go back anyway.
That's good.
Even if I was there longer than I should have been there, technically, I should have just stayed until the back off.
Cool. I agree. Let's get backed off, guys. Okay. So of course, one of the biggest topics our Blackjack Apprenticeship members want to hear more about has to do with cover and avoiding casino countermeasures. One of the questions I had is, when do casinos evaluate players? When did they make that decision?
When they're winning.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Okay.
Seriously, when a pattern of winning is noticed, that's like the biggest red flag, even if it has nothing to do with advantage play. When somebody is noticed, 3 or 4 times in a short amount of time winning, they might call for an evaluation.
So is one of the smarter things that we can do is not win too much at once?
Well, I mean, you want to play correctly. You don't want to leave a positive shoe or anything like that. But
yeah.
But back when I was playing, for example, when I was worried about longevity, I would on purpose leave after a really bad run.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Even if I wasn't getting heat or anything like that, I would just leave after a really bad run to let my rating show a loss. Just let the pit bosses see that I get my butt kicked sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's not a bad idea if you're somewhere where you're worried about longevity.
If you're playing rated.
Right. Well, even if you're not, it's a good idea to, even if you're not playing rated, sometimes they still recognize you and they're like, oh, there's this guy that doesn't want a card. Oh, he won again. Oh, he won again.
Yeah.
It's a good idea to let them see you lose once in a while if you're playing somewhere where you want to keep playing.
So, probably some sort of stop limit on wins too. I know it changes casino to casino, but there's got to be, each casino must have a threshold where it's like, holy crap, this guy's up, whatever it is. Could be 5,000 at one casino, could be 20,000 at another, but where they say like, okay, what's good? I mean, I know I got pegged at Red Rock because I won 20,000 in like half an hour. It was a different pit boss because she didn't know that I had lost 20,000 the night before. So all she sees is me having this huge win. And then there's the call up to surveillance, who just, all they had to do was look me up because I was playing rated as a known advantage player. But I'm assuming, trying to avoid just like a huge upswing on any one shift.
Yeah. I mean, and really, when you were playing rated, I was going to ask you if you were playing rated, because what she should have done is gone and look at your history to see, how's he been doing. That's kind of a move, not a move, but that's the procedure that a lot of people do, is when they see somebody's winning, they'll go look at his history or her history and just kind of see what they've been playing, like how they've been doing. But there are thresholds where they have to call surveillance or call the manager, whether they're suspected advantage play or not. Like, just if the guy's winning 5,000 or 10,000 or whatever it be.
Okay.
They have to call anyway, just to let them know that's going.
Interesting.
That's common in every casino. Every casino has a threshold.
And what about at what point does a casino decide to look up a player in a database?
That's up to surveillance.
Okay.
I mean, I like to. I mean, I could project and assume, but that's just up to the individual person whether they
Okay.
check that out or not, and whether they're competent enough to know to do that.
Sure, that's interesting. So, in your experience, how effective is having a clean ID? Meaning, being able to play rated, not as a known advantage player.
To be honest, I enjoyed playing when I was a clean player that didn't have any red flags or anything in on a rated card. I enjoyed that because of the comps and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any large scale difference between that and playing without a card.
Yeah, I think
it's just a matter of preference of what your priorities are and things like that.
Yeah, it's a question that is constantly coming up, and it's every year people think, well, now it's changed, but it's not that I haven't answered it before. I'm just wondering, well, now is it like, oh, well, yeah, 2019 you could play as a refusal, but 2020, no way, you're not going to get any time in.
Yeah, and I've even played on players cards that weren't mine, mm-hmm. and even those seem to get flagged. Mm-hmm. So I prefer to just play without a card, but like in the beginning when I was playing with clean cards, I don't really see a difference. It's just a matter of what your priorities are. If you're in it for the comps and you want to try to accumulate that, but there's the risk involved,
Yep. So in the Blackjack Insiders, you mentioned some key phrases that kind of set off alarms for the pit. Can you think of maybe a top 2 or 3, we'll call them triggers, that countermeasures were imminent, whether to back off or something?
Gee, I don't know. They've probably changed a little over the years. Which ones did I use in the book?
Well, you just mentioned that there were key phrases, and so some of our people are saying, well, what are these key phrases?
Oh, like when the floors are talking to each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. There were probably some back then, but you don't hear as much about it from the supervisors anymore, just because they don't really. The supervisor's main job now is to just see and report, and then anything after that it doesn't fall on them. So I don't know if I could give any advice on things to listen for or anything like that.
It's gonna be more the call to surveillance that's gonna result in countermeasures.
I guess I would advise to take note of your table number, listen for that, know what spot you're in, listen for that.
That's interesting.
I've mentioned in a few different places that rarely can a floor supervisor make a call about you without looking at you. They just can't do it.
Yeah.
So those are three good little things to watch for.
Cool. That's helpful. Any ideas of what could actually? I know this probably falls more on surveillance, but I'll ask anyway because I started. Any ideas what might actually throw off a review of a card counters game?
No, because even if you have cover plays and stuff, if you're playing with an advantage, they're going to know and they're going to back you off. That's why I advise against cover plays, and I assume why you advise against it too. A winning player is a winning player, no matter how many little cover plays. And if you do make enough cover plays to throw off surveillance, then you're not playing with an edge anyway. Yep. So.
Yeah, well, I got to admit, it was definitely some confirmation bias listening to you and Willie talk about this stuff. And he comes from a surveillance background, and he said that over 50%. He had a bunch of surveillance people. I remember watching this at the World Game Protection Conference that I spoke at. They were like counting down a deck, and he said over 50% failed counting down a deck of cards. Of course, some of it probably it might have been during a happy hour and they're having some drinks and they're probably trying to go really fast. But regardless, like half of them couldn't count down a deck of cards.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess my thought listening to that is if a surveillance worker isn't effective at really analyzing a skilled player, why would you use cover plays that they're not even going to notice, or they might even not even be aware. You're just costing yourself money, hoping someone happens to be smart enough to know that it was actually a mistake that you made.
Exactly. And to be fair to the surveillance techs, full reviews they use a software where they don't have to make decisions like that, and they don't have to have the know.
Yes.
But that's usually where it starts before a full review, is a rundown, which is an eye test basically, and most people don't have the know-how to administer the eye test.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to talk about this surveillance software. You called it, quote, necessary, but a knowledgeable human is better. And you told the story of someone that the casino kept playing because they did not get evaluated during a negative shoe. And it's like, well, a human would be like, oh, he's just avoiding negative shoes. But how does
And not getting the negative shoes.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So does a person run this software, or does it run on its own?
A person runs it. It's ran by voice activation. Like they use their voice to plug in the values of the cards and the moves and whatnot.
Yeah. How long does it take to run a full report?
It's not as much about the time as it is about the full scope of the play. Like they need a well-rounded, like they need to see the negative counts and the positive counts, and they need to see like all aspects of the play. It's not as much about time.
Okay. So yeah, I think it's another one of these, among AP like card counters or even prospective card counters is like, well, now there's software, but you're saying it takes time and it takes kind of a skilled enough person running it to do a proper evaluation.
Yes, and it to my knowledge, it can't be done live just because of the time that it takes to do it. So they have to use old tape.
And you said that it's expensive too. Like not all casinos have the money for this. What size casino is needed to justify this kind of software?
I don't know if it's about size. I would think that a small tribal casino might have more money to spend than a large, not tribal. It just depends on the place. And I think when I talked about that, I was more referring to the facial recognition software than the voice software. Just to be clear.
Yeah, well, fortunately for advanced players, not all casinos can afford the facial recognition software. Plus, it's not foolproof. I think we talked about that before.
It's certainly not. Yeah.
So this has been great so far. I've got a handful more questions. If you're not, I've got a few more. If you've got the time, what?
Absolutely.
And these are all from these last ones. I think are all from our members. One of them is, what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions that counters believe that are totally false?
Well, the biggest one is that the supervisor and the dealer know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
That's the biggest one. I mean, there's a fear of the supervisor watching, when realistically there's probably should be no fear at all of the supervisor watching unless you're in my section.
That's good. And we kind of just touched on it, but how worried should APs be about facial recognition or the future of it?
I wouldn't worry about it. A lot of players worry about being identified and stuff, but Willie and I talk about it all the time, that we're more watching the play than the person. Like, well, most people will try to evaluate the play before they even try or attempt to run a facial recognition.
That's good.
It's more about the sample, the play, than it is about the identity and the face.
That's good. You guys heard it from someone more knowledgeable about this stuff than me. So, any exceptional cover plays or acts that you've seen over the years?
No cover plays, because we've gone in circles about cover plays, but I've seen a few acts that are pretty good. These two guys that came in and were just buddies, and they were drunk, or my quotation marks in the air, they were drunk and kept jumping in on each other's game and stuff like that. It was a pretty good one. Wasn't fooled by it, but it was entertaining to watch. Maybe some other people were fooled by it.
Mm.
It's hard for me to comment on good acts because I usually know when they're acts.
Yeah.
I heard a story about a good one that was a married couple that where the guy was like teaching the girl how to play. Again, the quote marks in the air,
Uh-huh.
teaching her how to play, and then they just destroyed this table.
Oh, that's awesome. Was she the one betting the big money?
Yeah, he wasn't even betting.
Yeah. Well, I might ask you when we're not recording about the people that were air quote drunk, because I'm wondering if there's people that I know that would make the story even better. Um, if you had your AP career to do over, anything you would do differently?
I'd try to maybe build my bankroll a little more and take a little less out, like in paydays, so I could bet larger amounts.
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked to be able to jump up to that next denomination, the black chip action that I never really got to. I was always in the green chip minimums. I would have liked to have been able to go to the next level, and I could have probably done that if I'd reinvested instead of taking bigger paydays.
Yeah, that's such a tough. It's a tough thing when you're living off of it, or even because we're using it to get somewhere else, and so that means spending the money. But yeah, when you can grow that bankroll, that's really how you can generate the higher EV levels. Someone wanted to know if you think you'd encourage or discourage your son from either advantage play or working for casinos.
I would encourage either. Yeah, I think there's probably, I mean, there's no question. There's more money to be made playing than working in a casino, depending on your level of play. But and I've kind of gotten into a little bit of blackjack stuff with him. He's getting old enough now where he can keep track of the cards and stuff like that. So yeah, I would encourage him more to be a player than to work in a casino, because it's not a lifestyle a lot of people can handle.
Yeah, that's awesome. We should. My son can count down a deck. He wants to learn basic strategy, but I've said, well, you're 12. You got plenty of time to learn that. But maybe we should get the boys together for some blackjack training. By the time they're 21.
Yeah, we could put a team together.
That's right. That's right. The next generation.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, what I always tell people for my kids is I want to figure out, what they're going to be best at and what fits their personalities, and if that's advantage play and they can handle it, I'm all for it. But I'm not going to just assume because that was a good fit for me that's going to be a good fit for them. There's a lot of ways to make a living.
Yeah.
So to wrap it up, here's kind of my last question. You wrote a really interesting article about how card counters could actually be good for business. Can you kind of summarize that?
Yeah. It's kind of a point I've always made, is that too much goes into catching them and preventing them, when really a lot of them could actually be playing not even with an edge, right? We talk about under bankrolled players and players that don't know how to structure their bets, players that don't learn the index numbers, don't fully learn the craft, they don't learn the true count. There's lots of players out there that just do running count. And I've seen players get backed off like that, and it's just, let the guy stay. He's the perfect customer. He thinks he's going to win, and he's so there's a fine line between a card counter and the perfect customer.
Yeah,
and that line gets flirted with a lot. Not to mention, it's nice. A little just side thing is, it's nice for other players to see people win.
Yeah.
Card counters win, and sometimes they win in extravagant fashion, right? And it's fun to watch. Maybe they'll stay a little bit longer and think, hey, maybe I could do that.
Yeah.
Of course they can't, but
no, I mean, I tend to agree with you. I know that, of course, I'm biased, but I appreciate what Willie said. That he said, I'm going to take the time to really evaluate a player. And, I think that he said that extra half hour really, what's the cost to a casino? And I think there's probably a lot of, I remember a boot camp, a guy bragging about all the backoffs he had, and he had far from a winning game. And then he told us a year later how he'd lost $100,000, and it was not because of negative variance. It was because he was a horrific gambler who knew to change his bets, with whatever count he had in his head. But he's getting all these backoffs, and these casinos, the casinos that didn't back him off actually profited nicely off of this guy.
Yeah, there's lots of players like that. I mentioned the ones that are improperly trained, but there are ones that are properly trained that are just gamblers. Maybe they did learn the whole system and the true count, but they can't control their emotions. And when the count gets high, they throw it all out there. Or even when the count gets low, sometimes you see chasers, even though they know not to do that. They just, some people can't control their emotions. And players like that you want to keep around too, if the casino would want to keep around.
Yeah. Yep. Well, it's a tough job. Even when you have the skills, it's a tough job to do. And it is what it is with casinos, how they react to perceived advantage players. I understand it's a business for them. It's a business for us. If there's anything I wish I could, change, it's just how casinos and card counters treat each other. And of course, I've experienced more negative. I don't think I've ever. I used to play with a teammate that when he was losing, he'd kind of start belittling a dealer, and it was tough to watch. But aside from that, I've never yelled it during a back off or anything. But I've definitely been, cussed out. I've had 15 security guards circle me like I'm some threat or whatever. But I appreciate that you're taking such a kind of business mind. You've played both sides, both sides, and you've taken that kind of EV first or business first approach to both sides of the game. So appreciate your input.
Well, it's in my mind, it's the only way to do it, but hopefully we can get that message out there.
That's right. Well, it was a little scary hearing that Willie had read my book. But I don't really think it's moved the needle as far as slowing down card counting, but maybe we can get that message out there about treating each other with dignity and respect in the casinos if they ever open again.
That's sort of the point, right? I mean, that even though your book is out there and my book is out there and we're both saying the same thing, they're probably not moving the needles, even for the execs and the supervisors and the managers that do read it. It's probably not moving the needle, which is sort of my whole grand point.
Yeah. Well, that's good for advantage players to hear. Casinos are slow to learn, and they're doing fine. If you look at the revenues, they're doing just fine. But I liked what you said that it seems like the advantage players are the ones that are kind of learning faster or adapting faster than casinos are, and that's good for my business.
It's the truth. I can only speak from what I've seen, and that's what I've seen.
Awesome. Any final thoughts? Any ways people can, what do you think? Should advantage players listen to the Dropbox or should they not?
I think there's valuable stuff in there. We're not always going to be talking about things that advantage players can get something out of, but there's some valuable things in there. And I do know of some players that listen to the podcast. Just if nothing else, it's good to know what's going on the other side, whether it relates to you or not. So yeah, the Dropbox is good for everybody.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to think of anything you can promote. You got to let us know when your next book is done, and we'll get a huge plug for it. Send it out to everyone. And but I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us, and like I said, really appreciate your approach, kind of a level-headed, reasonable approach to both how casinos should be run and advantage play. So thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you too. I appreciate your attitude towards the casinos as well, and your manners and your wanting to learn what's going on the other side. That's appreciated too. And as far as plugs go, I could plug my website if that's okay. It's andrewuyal.com.
Yeah.
Check out the content and subscribe and get all the latest stuff that I'm putting out. Sometimes there's stuff in there that you could maybe learn something from and see what's going on the other side, just like the Dropbox.
Well, I'll let you know. Your website is already discussed on our forum, but for those who aren't on our forum, absolutely check that out. And we appreciate you, appreciate your ideas and what you're putting out there. So thanks again for your time.
Thanks a lot, Colin. It's been a blast. I'll come back anytime.
Awesome.